American people elected President Obama, the country was promised change. Yet there is very little difference between President Obama and President Bush. Take a listen. Then Senator Obama and practically every single Democrat relentlessly criticized President Bush and his administration for engaging in an illegal war in Iraq. Now fast forward to today and ask yourself, how has the U.S. foreign policy changed?
Now they call us Obamatrons. They say that we've got this mental disorder. We're all this Messiah complex. We're all smoking hope or whatever you want to call it. I'm going in here with a clear mind. I don't agree with Senator Obama 100% on every issue. I doubt that there's anybody I agree with 100% on the issues. But at least I know with Senator Obama, I'm going to get an eloquent man, a smart man who's willing to listen to all sides of the issue and come to a wise decision that he's not afraid to be transparent about and tell all of us about. And I think that's the best we can hope for in our politics these days, is someone who's going to take all of our positions and try to make the best decision for the country. But this movement is bigger than just Barack Obama. It's bigger than just one man. Under George W. Bush, we've seen 40 years of that cloud turn into a solar eclipse where hope is completely blotted out by the Cheney-Burton maladministration and all the terrible things we've seen in these past 8 years. We saw George W. Bush warned of 9/11. All we got was inaction. We saw George W. Bush, who was warned that there was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. He invaded anyway, an action that was indefensible. We find that the highest levels of the White House authorize torture in our name, a standard I find incredible.
Los Angeles has over 1,000 pot clinics, but I should be clear, they used to. Then all of a sudden, President Obama got tough on medical dispensaries throughout the country, and then all of a sudden Los Angeles decided they were going to get tough, and they said they're going to close all of the pot clinics. DEA, come on down! Come to LA and help us shut down all these clinics that should be legal. Now, I remember a guy running for president who said he would not use federal resources to do this kind of thing. Well, I wonder what his name was. Well, let's try to find out.
What I'm not going to be doing is using Justice Department resources to try to circumvent state laws on this issue, simply because I want folks to be investigating violent crimes and potential terrorism. We've got a lot of things for our law enforcement officers to deal with.
Well, he has way outshined President Bush in how many raids he's done. 170 DEA raids since 2009. In all of the 8 years of Bush, he only did 40 DEA raids, 61 federal indictments under President Obama, only 1 federal indictment under President Bush. Now, understand, these are legal in those states, but he's using federal resources to say, I don't care, I'm going to get war on drugs.
We don't really know to what extent the president is
we certainly know he's not stopping it. We certainly know he's not stopping it. We know that he put Michelle Leonhard, who is a Bush radical, as the head of the DEA. Now, if you didn't want to do a war on drugs on steroids, Michelle Leonhard really wouldn't be the person that you'd put at the DEA, would she?
No, you're absolutely right. And something that hasn't come up a lot in the discussion is that the executive branch, under current law, actually has the authority to reschedule marijuana for medical use without Congress having to take the action. They just have to make the finding. DEA officials have, in fact, recommended that going back to the 80s. And so the president could solve this problem with the stroke of a pen, and so far he hasn't.
So if he wanted to tomorrow, he could sign something saying, hey, you know what, it's no longer class 1. In fact,
Katrina happens. We see our brothers and sisters drowning from lack of care, and we get ineptitude. We get Browning, heck of a job. We get warned for global warming. George Bush's incurious. Our jobs disappear. As far as fixing the economy, George W. Bush is ineffective. Our money disappears into the money pit of Iraq. He is iniquitous about that. And with the authority of subpoenas being ignored and impeachment off the table, and our Constitution disappeared before our eyes, George W. Bush will be infamous throughout history. How y'all doing out there tonight? 15 days to go. Doesn't it feel good? We're going to be making a big change here. Like I said, my name is Radical Russ Belville. I'm on XM satellite every Saturday, noon to 2 on the America Left channel 167, as well as rebroadcast right here locally on Portland's progressive talk station, AM 620 KPOJ. But most of all, tonight, I'm just a 40-year-old guy who loves this country, and for the first time in my life, to paraphrase Michelle Obama, I am proud to finally have someone to vote for instead of having to vote against someone. Now, like I said, I'm a 40-year-old man. I was born in 1968. I was born on the actual day of the beginning of the 10th offensive in the Vietnam War. When I was 2 months old, Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis. When I was 4 months old, Robert F. Kennedy also met a bullet that was destined for him. And at 6 months old in Chicago, the riots were going on during the Democratic Convention. So a lot of hope died in the year that I was born. And then from that point on, also there was some glimmers of hope. Just like today, even though we live in dangerous and desperate times, there were glimmers of hope. LBJ was signing the Fair Housing Act, and the Apollo program was putting men into space from America, and well, Elvis had his comeback special. I think my dad slipped that one in there, sorry. But as a 40-year-old man, my political background, my political knowledge, and what I grew up with has always been under these dark clouds, this cloudy shade of gray. My first memory of politics, I can still remember coming up and having to ask my dad when I was about 5 years old, "Daddy, what's a crook?" Because there was the president on TV telling me he's not one. I didn't know what crook meant. That's my first political memory. I remember in '76 trying to figure out which one of the presidents I would be interested in. I'm about 6 or 7 years old. Who would be more interesting? The guy that Chevy Chase plays or the guy that Dan Aykroyd plays? So the early memories are a little fuzzy still. But by 1980, I'm 12 years old, and I'm starting to get an idea of what's going on with politics. And this was that first time when I had that situation of having to vote against somebody, that Ronald Reagan that I was researching and learning so much about. I had to vote against Ronald Reagan. And that didn't work. In 1984, I'm 16 years old. I'm getting more engaged with the political process. And once again, no, let's not vote for Reagan, vote against Reagan. And of course, that didn't work out for me either. But by 1988, I'm 20 years old. Now I can vote. Now I can do something about it. Now I can get involved with the Democrats and support Mike Dukakis. Okay, all right. Well, still, he's a good man, and I'll be brave and just tough it out and soldier my way through. By 92, I get Bill Clinton. Finally, somebody I can believe in, a young guy, a sax player, someone who's eloquent and didn't inhale. Well, I get it. Anyway, but I can get behind him. But then, after getting behind him and getting my hope up, I get NAFTA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the Defense of Marriage Act and an increase in the drug war. So I was a little disillusioned. By 96, it was a choice of Clinton or Dole, and, well, I had to go with Clinton on that one. By 2000, it was Al Gore, and once again, my hope is built, and I can believe in our process that we can elect a good man, and then people voted for the guy, and he doesn't get to win. And once again, my hope was shattered a little bit when the Supreme Court... I know he won anyway. I voted for him, and they didn't give us the election, the results that we voted for, and that needs to change. In 2004, John Kerry, once again, a good man that we all supported, but they didn't fight for those votes in Ohio, and they let those people stand out there 9 hours in the rain in those voting machines. So now, in 2008, again, as a 40-year-old man, I finally feel like, finally we can vote for someone and not against someone, and we can elect Barack Obama, the President of the United States.
The truth is, it hasn't. We are still entrenched in Iraq. We are fighting 2 other non-declared wars in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. There is a frightening level of saber-rattling between this administration, the Obama administration, and the government of Iran. They are actively pursuing al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and in Yemen. And President Obama, of all things, has extended the Patriot Act, allowing the U.S. government to continue to spy on us and allowing its agents to write their own search warrants in direct violation of the 4th Amendment to the Constitution.
Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, these countries are tiny compared to the Soviet Union. They don't pose a serious threat to us. Iran, they spend 1/100th of what we spend on the military. I mean, if Iran ever tried to pose a serious threat to us, they wouldn't stand a chance. Iran is a grave threat. It has an illicit nuclear program. It supports terrorism across the regions and militias in Iraq. It threatens Israel's existence. It denies the Holocaust. And, John, you're absolutely right that presidents have to be prudent in what they say. But, coming from you, who, in the past have threatened extinction for North Korea and, sung songs about bombing Iran, I don't know, how credible that is.
So as president, I've made it a priority to strengthen our partnership with the Yemeni government, training and equipping their security forces, sharing intelligence, and working with them to strike al-Qaeda terrorists.
Taoiseach, I think it's important to take this opportunity to bring a bit of balance into the discussions around the visit of the US President and his wife, given the almost unprecedented slobbering over them that the nation has been exposed to over the last number of days. And it's really hard to know which is worse, whether it's the outpourings of the Obamas themselves or the sycophantic fawning over them by sections of the media and the political establishment. We've had separate and special news bulletins by the state broadcaster to tell us what Michelle Obama and her daughters had for lunch in Dublin, but very little questioning of the fact that she was having lunch with Mr. Tax Exile himself. We had very little challenging of the fact that she's glad to be home, a country that she's been in less than a week and that her husband has very tenuous links in. And of course, the biggest irony of all, the protestations of Obama himself in his speech to the children in Northern Ireland about peace, when he said, "Those who choose the path of peace, I promise you that the United States of America will support you every step of the way. We will be the wind at your back." Now I ask you, is this person going for the Hypocrite of the Century award? Because we have to call things by their right names. And the reality is that by any serious examination, this man is a war criminal. He has just announced his decision to supply arms to the Syrian opposition, including the jihadists, fueling the destabilisation of that region and continuing to undermine secularism and knock back conditions for women. This is the man who is in essence stalling the Geneva peace talks by trying to broker enhanced leverage for the Syrian opposition by giving them arms, and to hell with the thousands more who lose their lives, or the tens of thousands more who will be displaced as this war goes on. This is the man who has facilitated a 200% increase in the use of drones, which have killed thousands of people, including hundreds of children. And you, Taoiseach, you are the one who's turned a blind eye on these activities. You've talked about the G8 being an opportunity to showcase Ireland. But is it not a reality that you have showcased us as a nation of pimps, prostituting ourselves in return for a pat on the head? To be honest with you, we were really speculating this morning whether you were going to deck the cabinet out in leprechaun hats decorated with a bit of stars and stripes to really mark abject humiliation here. So my question to you, Taoiseach, is as follows. What steps are you going to take to follow in the correct statements and the correct decision of your colleague Taoiseach Eamon Gilmore, who voted against the lifting of the arms embargo in relation to Syria? What steps are you going to take to ensure that no weapons for Syria are going to go through Shannon in breach of our international laws on neutrality? What steps are you going to take to showcase this country not as a lapdog of US imperialism, but as an independent nation with an independent foreign policy which takes a lead in international diplomacy to outlaw the use of drones, the favourite method of extermination of your friend Mr Obama? Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. Of course I said nothing about the Northern Ireland peace process, a process which everybody supports, but is not one that gives you a licence to do whatever you like anywhere else around the globe. There isn't much peace in Iraq, where 26 people lost their lives yesterday. There isn't much peace in Afghanistan. There isn't much much peace in Pakistan, and there certainly isn't much peace in Syria. And the side I'm on in Syria is the one, and what I agree with is the statement by Oxfam, where Oxfam said sending arms to the Syrian opposition won't create a level playing field. Instead, it further risks fueling an arms free-for-all, where the victims are the civilians of Syria. Our experience tells us that the crisis will only drag on for longer if arms are poured in. And that's in essence what the Americans have done here. I can only take from your non-answer to the question that you were asked is that you're going to take no steps to ensure that those arms will not be sent through Shannon in breach of our neutrality. You said here last week no arms ever came through Shannon. How do you know that, seeing as no investigations take place? The reality is, in 2012, 548 US planes landed in Shannon. How do you know what was on them if you haven't examined them? Your Minister for Transport revealed in a parliamentary question that 239 civilian planes landed in Shannon, where they sought permission because they were carrying munitions of war or dangerous goods on a civilian aircraft. What steps are you going to take to intervene in this situation? And the last point I'll make is that people in this country are very fond of our American brothers and sisters, and I think we stand far more shoulder to shoulder with them by making valid criticisms of their president, who has broken his election promises, rather than just pimping this nation as a tax haven for their corporations. I'm sure the Americans would far prefer if their multinationals paid their taxes at home rather than offshore here, so they could develop their health care, so they wouldn't be wasting money on arms being sent to slaughter people in other countries.